When I called to ask what time my son's funeral would be, my daughter-in-law told me I wasn't invited to say goodbye to my own boy. The photograph in my hands shows Wesley at 22, graduation day, wearing that careful smile he'd learned to give me. Before the silence, before the 3 years that stretched between us like a chasm I was too proud to cross. I raised him alone after his mother died, fed him, clothed him, taught him to be a man. And when he brought home that woman, when he chose her over everything I'd given him, I thought I was protecting our family name. I was destroying it instead. I am Atticus Holbrook, 78 years old. A man who built his life on certainties that crumbled the moment I needed them most. The memory starts 15 years ago, October. The leaves were turning when Wesley brought her home. I remember the sound of his key in the lock. The nervous way he cleared his throat before calling out to me. He was 28 then, a good job at the accounting firm, clean apartment. Everything I'd raised him to be after his mother passed. But his voice carried something different that day. Something I should have recognized as hope. "Dad, I want you to meet someone." Lorelai stepped into my living room wearing a yellow dress. Small hands, dark eyes that looked directly at mine without flinching. Most people found reasons to look away from me eventually. She extended her hand. "Mr. Holbrook, Wesley talks about you constantly." I shook it once, brief, proper. "Does he?" Not a question, a statement. Cold as the October air outside, Wesley shifted his weight, that old tell from childhood when he knew he'd tracked mud through the house. "Lorelai teaches 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary." "Teaching," I nodded. Set down my newspaper with deliberate precision. "And where are you from originally?" Again, not a question. "My family came from Lebanon when I was 5. Her voice stayed steady, warm. "We settled in the South Side. Near the mosque on 5th Street. The mosque on 5th Street, I knew it. Knew the families who gathered there, different from us, different customs, different God." I folded my hands. "I see," 2 words, but Wesley heard everything I didn't say. The disappointment, the judgment, the door closing before she'd barely stepped through it. "Dad." His voice carried a warning I chose to ignore. Lorelai tried again. "Wesley mentioned you work at the steel mill, 30 years. That must be rewarding work. It pays the bills." I picked up my newspaper, shook it open. "Wesley, your dinner's in the refrigerator." The dismissal hung in the air like smoke. Lorelai's smile faltered just for a moment, but I saw it. Wesley saw it too. "We should go." He touched her elbow, gentle, protective. "I'll call you tomorrow, Dad." I didn't look up from my paper, didn't say goodbye, didn't watch them leave, but I heard Lorelai's voice in the hallway, soft. "Forgiving, he just needs time to get to know me." Time, as if time would change what she was, what she represented, the disruption of everything I'd worked to build. 2 months later they got engaged. Wesley called to tell me. His voice bright with joy I couldn't share. "She said yes, Dad. Can you believe it?" I could believe it. Women like her. They knew how to attach themselves to good men, men with steady jobs and futures. "When's the wedding?" "Next spring. April 15th. I want you to walk me down the aisle." Walk him down the aisle, like I was giving him away, which I suppose I was. "We'll see." The engagement dinner happened without me. I told Wesley I had the flu, stayed home. Watched television, ate a frozen dinner that tasted like cardboard. He stopped by the next evening, let himself in with his key, found me in the same chair. "You weren't sick." I muted the television. "Wasn't I?" Her parents drove down from Cleveland. Her sisters came. Her whole family was there asking about you. "And what did you tell them?" Wesley sat across from me. The same spot where he used to do homework while I cooked dinner, back when it was just the 2 of us against everything. "I told them you were sick." "Good." "It wasn't good, Dad. It was a lie." I looked at my son, really looked at him. He had his mother's eyes, Sarah's gentle way of seeing the world, too trusting, too quick to believe the best in people. "You think I don't want you to be happy? I think you've already decided she's not good enough." Haven't I? Another statement. Not a question. Wesley leaned forward. "She loves me." "Love." I turned the television volume back up. "Love doesn't pay mortgages. Love doesn't raise children properly. Love doesn't keep families together when times get hard." "What kept us together then, after Mom died?" I had no answer for that, so I gave him silence instead. The wedding happened on a rainy April morning. Small ceremony at her family's mosque. I received an invitation, formal cardstock with gold lettering, my name written in careful script. I threw it away. Spent that Saturday at the hardware store, bought paint for the spare bedroom. Came home, started cutting in the edges around the window trim. The phone rang at 6. "Dad," Wesley's voice, different now, quieter. "We're married. Congratulations. I waited for you until the last minute. I kept thinking you'd change your mind." I set down my paintbrush. "You thought wrong." She asked if she'd done something to offend you. What was I supposed to tell her? Tell her the truth. Tell her I raised you better than this. The line went quiet. When Wesley spoke again, his voice carried something I'd never heard before. Finality. "Better than what, Dad?" "Better than choosing someone who makes me laugh." Someone who brings me coffee in bed and remembers how I like my eggs. Someone who wants to give you grandchildren and Sunday dinners and all the family you claim to want. I want what's best for you. No. You want what's comfortable for you. He hung up that night. First time in his life Wesley had ever hung up on me. The years that followed became a careful dance of avoidance. Birthday cards sent late. Christmas presents dropped off when I knew they wouldn't be home. Phone calls that lasted 3 minutes. Maybe 4 if the weather was particularly bad. I told myself this was temporary, that Wesley would come to his senses. That marriages like theirs didn't last. Different worlds, different values, oil and water. I was patient, I could wait. Then Lorelai got pregnant, twins, due in December. Wesley called to tell me on a Tuesday evening. His voice carried that same bright joy from the engagement, the same hope I couldn't share. Girls, Dad, can you believe it? Twin girls. I could believe it. Another generation, another layer of complication. Names picked out yet. Hermione and Primrose. Lorelai chose them. She loves books, classic literature. Hermione and Primrose, foreign names. Complicated names that teachers would mispronounce and other children would mock. Interesting choices, 2 words that said everything. They're beautiful names, Dad, if you say so. The silence stretched between us, miles of telephone wire carrying disappointment in both directions. We'd like you to meet them. When they're born, be part of their lives. Part of their lives, part of whatever strange hybrid family they were building, part of something I didn't recognize or understand. We'll see how things go. But things went the same way they always went. The twins were born on December 3rd, healthy, perfect, 6 pounds each. Wesley called from the hospital at 2 in the morning. They're here, Dad, they're perfect. Lorelai did amazing. Amazing, like giving birth was some kind of performance. Good. Visiting hours start at 10, room 314. Room 314, he was inviting me. Giving me another chance to pretend I approved of this life he'd built without my permission. I'll try to make it. I didn't try. Spent that day cleaning the garage, organizing tools that were already organized, sweeping concrete that was already clean. The girls grew up in photographs, Christmas cards with pictures of them in matching dresses, Easter cards with them hunting eggs in Lorelai's parents' backyard, birthday cards with them blowing out candles I'd never helped light. Hermione learned to read early. Primrose loved horses. They played soccer, took piano lessons, got good grades. Normal children living normal lives in a family I refused to acknowledge. Wesley stopped calling as often. The invitations became fewer, the updates shorter. He was protecting them from me, from my coldness, my judgment. My refusal to bend. I told myself this was what I wanted, clean lines, clear boundaries, no messy complications. But sometimes I found myself driving past their house. A small blue ranch on Maple Street, bikes in the driveway. A garden Lorelai tended every evening after work. Wind chimes on the porch that caught the light. I never stopped. Never got out of the car, just drove past like a tourist in my own son's life. The breaking point came 3 years ago. November, the girls were 12, old enough to understand family dynamics, old enough to ask questions. Wesley called on a Sunday evening. His voice carried exhaustion I recognized but chose to ignore. Dad, we need to talk. About what? About the girls, about Lorelai, about this wall you've built between us. Wall, like I was the one keeping us apart. I don't know what you mean. You know exactly what I mean. Hermione asked me why Grandpa Atticus never comes to see us. What was I supposed to tell her? Tell her the truth, tell her I'm busy. Busy doing what? Sitting alone in that house, watching television. Avoiding the family that wants to love you. Love me, like love was simple. Like love didn't come with conditions and expectations and compromises I wasn't willing to make. I never asked for their love. No. You just demanded Lorelai earn yours. And when she couldn't meet your impossible standards, you wrote us all off. Impossible standards, like wanting my son to marry someone who shared our values was unreasonable. Your mother would be ashamed. The words came out before I could stop them, sharp, cruel, designed to wound. The silence that followed lasted forever. When Wesley spoke again, his voice was different, colder, more final than I'd ever heard it. My mother would be ashamed of what you've become, what you've chosen over family. What I've chosen. Yes, what you've chosen, pride over love, judgment over acceptance, being right over being happy, being right over being happy. Like the two couldn't coexist, like principles meant nothing if they made people uncomfortable. I don't have to justify my choices to you. No, you don't, and I don't have to keep begging you to be part of our lives. Then don't, 2 words. Sharp as glass, final as death. Fine, don't call us anymore, don't drive past our house, don't send cards you don't mean, we're done, Dad, all of us. If that's what you want, it's not what I want. It's what you've chosen. The line went dead, not slammed down in anger, just quietly disconnected, like our relationship, like everything I'd spent 45 years building. I set the phone back in its cradle, walked to the kitchen. Made myself a cup of coffee, sat at the table where I'd helped Wesley with homework 20 years ago. The The silence in the house felt different now, permanent, complete. I told myself this was better, cleaner, no more awkward conversations. No more pretending to care about children who weren't really mine. No more dealing with a woman who would never understand our family. Our family, what was left of it, just me, in a house full of memories. Waiting for a phone that would never ring. 3 years passed like seasons I stopped counting. Winter into spring into summer into winter again. The silence became my companion. Cold, reliable, predictable, I kept busy. Fixed things that weren't broken. Painted rooms that didn't need painting. Organized closets that were already organized. Anything to fill the hours between sunrise and sleep. Sometimes I caught glimpses of them around town. Wesley at the hardware store, thinner than I remembered, gray threading through his dark hair. He didn't see me, I made sure of that. Lorelai at the grocery store once, loading her cart with medicine, cold medicine, aspirin. The kind of supplies you buy when someone's sick. I should have asked, should have walked over, said something. I bought my milk and left through the other exit. The girls grew taller in the photographs that lived in my memory. 15 now, almost women. Hermione still reading, Primrose still drawing horses in careful pencil strokes. I knew this from the librarian who knew their teacher who mentioned it in passing. Small town gossip. The only connection I had left to my own blood. I told myself this was enough, this distance, this careful avoidance, this life I'd built on principle and pride. Then Tuesday morning arrived, March 15th. A day that started like every other day for 3 years, coffee at 6. News at 6:30, shower at 7, the same routine that kept me moving forward when everything else had stopped. The phone rang at 8:12. I remember the time because I was washing my coffee cup, looking at the clock on the kitchen wall. Thinking about whether I needed groceries, I almost didn't answer. Nobody called anymore. Nobody had reason to, but something made me pick up on the fourth ring, some instinct I should have trusted years ago. "Hello, Atticus," Lorelai's voice, but different, hollow, empty in a way that made my chest tighten. "Lorelai, it's about Wesley," 4 words, but I heard everything in the spaces between them, the pause before my son's name. The way her voice broke on the second syllable. "What about Wesley?" "He's gone." Gone, such a small word for something so enormous. Gone where? "Atticus," her voice was patient, gentle, the way you speak to children who don't understand. "He had a heart attack last night. The paramedics they tried everything." Heart attack. Wesley was 45, young, healthy. He played tennis on weekends, coached the girls' soccer team. Men like that didn't have heart attacks. Men like that didn't die. That's not possible. I know it's not possible, but it happened. The kitchen floor felt unsteady. I reached for the counter, gripped it until my knuckles went white. When? Around midnight. He was reading in bed, said he felt strange. Then he just collapsed. Midnight, while I was sleeping, while I was dreaming about nothing important. My son was dying 12 miles away and I was dreaming about paint colors and grocery lists. The girls, there with my parents, they don't really understand yet. Don't understand. How could they understand? How could anyone understand that fathers just disappear? Just stop existing between one heartbeat and the next? "What do you need?" The question came automatically. Muscle memory from 45 years of being Wesley's father, even when I'd been a poor one. "Nothing, I thought you should know, like I was some distant relative. Some old family friend who deserved notification. When's the funeral?" The words came out before I could think, before I could consider what I was asking, what right I had to ask. The silence stretched between us. Miles of telephone wire carrying 3 years of hurt, 3 years of rejection, 3 years of a grandfather who'd chosen pride over presence. "Atticus, when's the funeral, Lorelai?" My voice was stronger now, more certain this was my son. My blood, my responsibility. Whatever had happened between us, whatever walls I'd built, this was different, this was final. "You're not invited." 5 words, quiet, not angry, not cruel, just tired. So tired that even delivering this blow seemed to exhaust her. "What did you say?" "You're not invited to the funeral, to the wake, to any of it." Not invited to my own son's funeral. To the final goodbye I'd never get another chance to say. "He's my son. He was your son. For 45 years he was your son, and for the last 3 years you acted like he didn't exist." That's not true, isn't it? When did you last call him? When did you last ask about the girls? When did you last act like you cared whether any of us lived or died? The questions hit like physical blows, each one true, each one deserved. "I cared. You cared about being right, you cared about your pride, you cared about your principles, you never cared about us." Us, she still said us, even now, even with Wesley gone. She was still protecting what was left of the family I'd rejected. "Lorelai, please." "Please what?" "Please let you show up now. Please let you pretend you were part of his life. Please let you grieve publicly for the son you abandoned privately." Abandoned, such a harsh word, but accurate, brutally accurate. "I made mistakes. You made choices and choices have consequences." The line went quiet. I could hear her breathing. shallow, exhausted, the breathing of a woman who'd lost her husband and now had to tell her daughters that their grandfather wouldn't be there to help them say goodbye. The service is Thursday, 10 in the morning. St. Mary's on 5th Street, you won't be there. Lorelei, goodbye Atticus. The line went dead, not slammed, just quietly disconnected, like everything else in my life. I stood in my kitchen holding a silent phone, listening to the dial tone that sounded like judgment, like finality, like the sound of doors closing forever. My son was dead. My granddaughters were orphaned of the only grandfather they'd ever really known. My daughter-in-law was widowed and still found strength to protect her family from the man who'd hurt them. I set the phone back in its cradle, walked to the living room, sat in my chair. The same chair where I'd made all the choices that led to this moment. Outside, the world continued. Cars drove past. Children walked to school. Life moved forward for everyone who hadn't spent 3 years building walls that couldn't be torn down in time to matter. Wesley was dead, and I was not invited to say goodbye. The mirror in my hallway showed me a stranger, 78 years old, gray hair, deep lines carved by decades of stubborn choices. I searched that face for some trace of the father Wesley had loved, found only the man who'd driven him away. This was the face that had greeted Lorelei with cold politeness, the face that had turned away from granddaughters who shared my blood, the face that had chosen pride over presence until presence was no longer possible. I looked like my own father, same hard mouth, same disapproving eyes, the man who taught me that love was earned through conformity. That acceptance came with conditions. I'd spent 45 years becoming him, and now I was alone with the result. Thursday morning arrived gray and cold, March rain tapping against my windows. I dressed in my black suit, the one I'd worn to Sarah's funeral 30 years ago. It still fit, still carried the weight of grief in its fabric. I drove to St. Mary's anyway, not to go inside, not to force my way into a farewell I hadn't earned. Just to sit across the street in my car and watch the people who'd actually known my son file through the heavy wooden doors. They came in steady streams, coworkers, neighbors, teachers from the girls' school. Friends I'd never met because I'd never asked to meet them. A community of people who'd loved Wesley while I'd been busy judging him. Lorelei arrived in a black car driven by her brother. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone learning to walk on broken legs. The girls flanked her, Hermione tall and serious, Primrose smaller but steady, all three of them holding each other up. They looked like family, real family. The kind that shows up for each other. The kind that grieves together instead of alone in parked cars across empty streets. I recognized some faces. The librarian who'd mentioned the girls' interests. The pharmacist where I bought my blood pressure medication. The mechanic who'd serviced Wesley's car, all of them carrying flowers, all of them carrying memories I'd never been allowed to share. The service lasted an hour. I sat through every minute, watching strangers say goodbye to my son while I remained outside in the rain, where I belonged, where my choices had placed me. When it ended, they emerged in clusters, quiet conversations, gentle embraces. The rituals of a community taking care of its wounded. I started my car and drove home. That evening I pulled out the box from my bedroom closet, documents I hadn't looked at in years, bank statements, insurance papers. The will I'd updated after Sarah died but never mentioned to Wesley. The savings account had grown larger than I'd realized, 43 years at the steel mill. Overtime pay I'd banked because I had nothing else to spend it on. Interest compounding through decades of careful living. Enough for college, for both girls, for futures I'd never be part of but could still provide. I found paper in the kitchen drawer, a pen that worked. Sat at the table where Wesley used to do homework while I cooked dinner. The first attempts went in the trash. Too formal, too cold, too much like apologies I had no right to make. I started again. Dear Lorelei, I am not writing to ask forgiveness. We both know I don't deserve it. I am writing because Wesley would want his daughters to have opportunities, even if those opportunities come from a grandfather they barely remember. The enclosed bank information represents 43 years of savings. It should be enough for college, for both girls, for whatever dreams they're brave enough to chase. I failed as a father. I failed as a grandfather. I failed as a human being who should have known that love matters more than pride. But failure doesn't erase responsibility. These children are my blood, my legacy, the only good thing I contributed to a future I'll never see. Tell them about their father. Tell them he was kind where I was cruel, patient where I was stubborn, that he chose love over fear every single day of his life. Tell them he got that from their mother, from you. Tell them their grandfather was a foolish old man who learned too late that being right means nothing when you're right alone. Use this money well. Give them the chances I never gave their father. The acceptance I was too proud to offer. The unconditional love that should come with family. I signed it simply, Atticus Holbrook. The envelope felt heavy in my hands, heavier than paper should feel, heavy with 15 years of missed birthdays, missed Christmas mornings. Missed opportunities to be the grandfather those girls deserved. I walked to the mailbox in the rain, raised the red flag, left the envelope for tomorrow's pickup. Back inside, I returned to my chair. The same chair where I'd made every wrong choice that led to this moment. The photograph of Wesley's graduation still sat on the side table. That careful smile he'd learned to give me. But now I could see something else in the picture. Something I'd missed for 15 years. Hope. Even then, even after everything, he'd still hoped I might change, might soften, might choose love over judgment. He'd carried that hope until the very end. Through marriage and fatherhood and 3 years of silence. He'd kept the door open until his heart stopped beating. I picked up the photograph, traced his young face with my finger. Outside, snow began to fall. March snow that wouldn't last. That would melt by morning and leave the world clean again. Some mistakes can't be undone. Some words can't be taken back. Some relationships can't be repaired once they're broken beyond recognition. But small kindnesses can still be given. Even by foolish old men who learned too late that love was always the only thing that mattered. Even by grandfathers who'd never earned the title but could still provide for the children who carried their blood. I set the photograph back on the table, settled into my chair. The house felt different now, still quiet, still empty, but no longer quite so cold. Tomorrow Lorelai would find an envelope in her mailbox. A small offering from a man who'd lost the right to call himself family. Money that couldn't buy back the years but might provide a different kind of future. For Hermione who loved books. For Primrose who drew horses. For the granddaughters I'd never really known but would never stop loving. Wesley had his mother's smile. I wondered if the girls had inherited it too. I hoped they had. I hoped they'd use it more freely than their father ever could with me. The snow continued falling outside my window, covering the world in quiet forgiveness. In second chances I'd never asked for and didn't deserve, but the girls deserved them. They deserved everything I'd failed to give their father. And for the first time in 3 years, that felt like enough.